Hi, today I'd like to talk about Parse. Okay, Parse.com is a service that essentially provides all of the back end for a web app or a mobile application that you might want to build. What does that mean? Well, that means you don't have to create a database and you don't have to write back end code to support your database. Actually, you would be writing some of that code, but you'll write it all on the front end in JavaScript. Normally, you might have to write write code on the back end that gets things from your database, and you would write that maybe in a language like PHP, and then you'd also have to write in the MySQL language to access the database. And then you might write some front-end code to manage everything that appears on the screen. With Parse, you'll write all of your code on the front end. That's a huge advantage, I feel, if you are a designer. Okay, as a designer, you're all in the front end and you want to do everything on the front. The back end has no appeal, and it doesn't really do a whole lot artistically. So how does Parse work here? Well, this is Parse.com, and what you would do is you would register and log in. And right now I'm logged in, and I have a dashboard here. You can see in the corner it says Account and Dashboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down. I have this project here called Test 2. Actually, maybe I'll just go to the dashboard here, and I'll make a brand new project. So I'll go to my project here. It says Create New App, and I'll name my app. I'll call it Test Number 3. I'm getting a lot of these, right? And I'll click Create. And Parse is going to make a new app here called Test 3. Okay, so there's a few ways that you can work with this. If I go to the core button here, it shows me the Parse database, and right now I won't have anything in it because I haven't created anything. Let me go back. To set up an app now, what we'll have to do is we'll have to get our app ID and JavaScript key. I'm going to do this example in JavaScript. Parse works with Android and iOS and a few other systems, but it's pretty good, and they provide a lot of support. There's a lot of APIs and libraries and things that they provide. So I'm going to go. An easy way to start here is to go to this Quick Start button. So I'm going to go there, and then it asks me, what kind of app are you going to create? So I'm going to go to Data, and then it says, how are you going to deploy, or how are you going to deliver your app? Mobile, desktop, web. Let's do a web app. And then you can start a new project or work with an existing project. Okay, I'll go to New Project. These two are almost exactly the same, and they give you an opportunity to download a blank JavaScript project. And then they give you some test code here. So why don't we get started here? I'll download their project. And here it is right here. And then it comes with a CSS folder with 2 files and then an HTML file. So let's open this up in the browser over here and take a look at it. So it looks like this. It says, hey, you're ready to use Parse. Right? It says, hey, looks like there's a problem right there. So let's go take a look. So if I open up this file here, and I'm going to open it up with brackets here, and there's their default HTML file. And at the bottom here, there's a little block of JavaScript. And in the JavaScript block, there's this line here. It begins Parse Initialize. So Parse Initialize is where we're going to begin working with Parse. Okay? And it requires that you include the application ID and the JavaScript key. So let's go get those. Back in this other page here, step 2 says add your keys to application, and they actually give you that whole line. So this first one is your JavaScript or your app ID, and the second one is your JavaScript key. So you can actually just copy this whole line right here. Let me try and copy that there. There we go. So I'll copy that And then we can just place that here where we had the other one, okay? And so we'll save that. And then I'll talk about what this does down here in a minute, right? This app doesn't do anything. It just creates a new object with a foo property, and the value is bar, right? So it really doesn't do a whole lot. Let's test it. So I'm going to go to my app here, and then I'll refresh it. And then it says, hey, we've also just created your first object using this code. So what just happened? I mean, it doesn't really look like anything happened there, but actually what happened was I loaded this JavaScript page, or this page, and the JavaScript in the page sent a message to the Parse server and created a new table in the database. So Parse has a database that I'm working with, and then it created a new table in the database, and the tables hold records. And then it created a new record in that table. So this is the code that's in the JavaScript file. They're just kind of printing it here for convenience. Let's zoom in on that, right? And what's going on is we've got a variable here called test object, and we're talking to Parse, and we're saying parse.object extend, and we're creating a new object, a new Parse object, okay? And this object essentially represents a table in our database. On the next line, we're going to create a new record in the table, okay, or a new object, okay? A new object that's going to be one record in this table. So we say, you know, test object from here, we're going to say new instance of the test object. So this essentially acts as a class, even though I like to think about it as a table, because it's going to create the table, and we're going to make records from that object, you know, to create records in the table, okay? So this is our new record in the table, and if we want to save that record to our database, we're going to say testObject.save, and we can include properties here for that object. So this, if we include a JavaScript object here with property and value pairs, then each one of those will be a field in the table. So this will be a field called foo, and the value will be bar. Okay? If you refresh this page more than once, it'll create multiple copies of the same object, so you may see that. Let's go take a look. So I'm going to go back here, and I'll switch back to core, and you can see up here it says test3. That's the name of my Parse project here, right? And then you can see I've got a record in my table here with a field called foo and a value called bar. So what is this table here? Well, this is a table, and think of it as a spreadsheet, or a, you know, like a, I don't know, like a, you know, I don't know, I guess the spreadsheet is the closest thing I can think of, right? But anyway, every row is one record. Think of that as one entry in the database, okay? And then the headings at the top here in blue, these are columns, right? They call them columns like this, and this is called a row, okay? So the record is a row. The columns represent values that each record can hold, and you can define as many values as you like. So in this table, you know, by default, the table is going to get object ID, created at, updated at, and ACL. And then it's got a custom field that I added, or that the default code added, called foo. Okay, and then it put the value bar in there. Let's create another record here. Let's go into the code, and maybe we'll leave this value as foo, but we'll change the bar to hello world. And then I'll save it, and then we'll go back and we'll refresh our page. So I refresh it, and then when I look over here, I don't see anything, so what we'll do is we'll refresh the view here, okay? So I can do that by clicking on this little button here, refresh data, and now you can see I have two records in my table. The first one has a value of bar in the foo column, and the second one has a value of hello world in the foo column. Well, that doesn't really work out so well, right? Or I mean, it's not very useful. Like, what is foo, right? Let's imagine, what if you wanted to create a table that held products, right? And you want to have, you know, you want to store all the products on your website here on the database, right? So maybe instead of the foo table, I'll make instead of the foo column, I'll make a new column called name, okay? And I'll make a product called, you know, mental floss, okay? And then maybe I'll add another property here. I'll give it a price of $100, okay? And then, you know, what we'll do is we'll save that, and we'll go back to, oops, that's the wrong one. We'll go back to the browser here and refresh, and then we'll go over here and we'll refresh our parse table again. And now you can see I've got a new record here, and I didn't put anything in the foo table that time, but there's another table here, another field somewhere. Where did it go? Let me refresh that. Oh yeah, there we go. I had to fully refresh the browser, not just the button. Okay, so now you can see I've created 2 new columns or fields, right, with values of mental floss and price 100. Okay, so that's your basic parse idea, and this demo project right here is not, you know, it doesn't do a whole lot, right? It's just got some basic code to create a new object, you know, with the name test object, right? And that's all this demo does, but it does illustrate exactly how you can work with parse, and hopefully for anybody who's had any experience doing, you know, back-end database stuff, it probably points out like how easy this is to use, and you know that it could be like really like a real great time saver for some projects, right? So anyway, so there's a quick introduction to parse, and then I'll do some more examples later. Okay, so that'll be our short introduction there.